Recording is on.
Well, hello everyone. Today is Sunday, April the 3rd, 2022, and this is the meeting 103 of the Extinctionati. There is no agenda for today, so the conversation is open. And so there's...
It's wide open. We can do what we like. There's nobody here to stop us.
Why Extinctionati?
Let's run amok. Okay. Yeah, I want to run amok. First of all, I want to run amok and be heretical, and suggest that we throw the introduction music and use something different. On the grounds that I love classical music, and one of my pet hates is when bits and pieces of classical music are used in some other context. It's okay in this regard because, if I go and listen to Bach's Toccata and Fugue, I'll only think of these meetings, which is that's fine. But, plenty of times the music is used for commercial purposes or something frivolous, and, it's wretched, really, to listen to some major work of art, some great symphony, and right in the middle of it, they'll play a little bit of music, and all you can think of is somebody's packet of potato chips or their brand of toilet paper or something like that. I remember. I think I was telling Sophie once. We're fairly lucky here in Australia. There's some very good classical music radio stations which are not commercialized. They're basically free of disturbance, and they're run by serious people, who take their music very seriously and basically volunteer operated with a huge amount of dedication go into these stations. But one of the things that even they were doing was repeatedly using sections of well-known bits of classical music for like a sponsorship announcement or something like that. And, I thought I had communication with them for quite a while. And I often thought to myself, look, at people who profess a love of this music, this high art form, are willing to misuse it like that. And even they can't be talked out of it and want to persist in doing it, then there's probably not much hope everywhere else, yeah, that's just my little opening thing for the meeting.
I totally agree. The Eastern music, the Eastern meeting music was initially not chosen by me because I was not even doing all the recording.
No, I think it was Hugh. I'm fairly sure it was Hugh.
Hugh suggested it. I think he had used it before for some other thing. Anyway, why don't we open this to suggestions for the people who attend the Eastern meeting, or else we could put the same music as we use for the Western, and it would be more familiar. It's the music we're used to, and
or use something that is use something else that isn't music at all. I mean, just one thing that I recorded a couple of times was sounds of crickets in the evening.
Yeah, natural sound.
Or frogs in a pond, or I get those sounds here.
Well, why don't we open the suggestions on the Reddit, on the sub on Reddit, and you could ask if people have got some, or even people who listen to the meeting, if you have some suggestions. I agree. I really don't like launching the meeting with the Toccata and Fugue I really don't like it, and actually, it's just too. It's not the music that's appropriate for what we're doing anyway. I don't think so. It's not, you know.
See, I think Hugh was also, I mean, he operated at many different levels, and I think he was perfectly serious, but at the same time, he didn't mind baiting people a little bit too. And you know, I thought a couple of times, I should just call him out over this bit of music. But I could just imagine the conversation we would have had
Yeah,
where he would have.
I know. I
I,
imagine.
I wouldn't have been able I wouldn't be allowed to win, you know.
No, 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 no. It would have been 100
But that's a
reasons.
but
Yeah.
that's yeah. Well, there's so many reasons for that because um, uh, I mean, from
Hmm.
a point of view, as he probably would have been arguing from the point of view of my ego investment in winning this argument and getting the piece of music taken off. Um, so you can see it would have
Yeah.
rapidly ended up being a multi-level discussion. Um, but
Okay.
yeah,
You put that up.
um,
I'll put that up as a question, maybe on on the sub later on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I was. I,
before we have you got something else? Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, we might have. We might just get on to because I Alish sent me an email. I
Yeah.
asked him about his perspective on the Ukrainian situation from somebody who's living in Slovenia. And we can get on to that in a minute. Um, I was just going to say I was hoping that Petra would come along because she said she'd written something about Hugh, and I noticed that she didn't post it. I just sort of wondering whether she was wanting to share it at all with us because I just had a feeling she might have written something quite worth hearing. So anyway, but yeah, I might just. You want me to read out what Alice wrote in his email and see if we can pick up a point from there regarding the Ukraine, or is the Ukraine being beaten to death? We want to talk about something else.
Well, I have three other points that I wanted
Okay, we'll do
to
that first.
make.
Yeah,
So
go
maybe
ahead.
we could just. They're very brief, and
Mm,
we're not going to need to discuss them. It's really more information, and then I'd be very interested in what you're suggesting, Gary. But if I may
yeah,
just
do that
mention,
first. Yeah.
because we're talking about Reddit and people, connecting with us. There was somebody on Reddit last week, I think roughly, who wanted to know Hugh's real name.
Mm,
And this
mm,
person disclosed his real name and his address and his profession. And well, I told him that I would put the question to the Extinctionati in the meetings and eventually by email, because we know now that, Hugh has told us in the past that he has tried to erase his presence online from the past when he was operating under his real name, and he's not around us anymore now. So I don't really know what to answer to that person. And this is, I'm just putting this out there. Maybe people would want to put something in the comments because there's only Garry and Going South today at the meeting. But maybe we should reach a consensus and maybe communicate this by email. And because this anonymity online thing is coming up, another thing, and I discussed that with Garry previously on a call, that came up to me in my mind, is that, well, with what happened to Hugh and with the distress we were in trying to get in touch with him, this would have been extremely aggravated if Garry hadn't known his real identity and contacts with his family, because we would have been completely stuck trying to communicate to his family what had happened to him and trying to find him, etc. So I was thinking that most of us in the Extinctionati, so I'm not going to say inner circle, but maybe there's quite a lot of people now on the mailing list, are operating under a pseudo, an avatar, and we don't have our real names. Some of us have, but most of us don't, and or addresses or phone numbers. And in case of uh, incident, whether related to collapse or related to personal circumstances, hopefully not death, but disease or even technical problems with the internet, I'm just putting out there a suggestion that we would, by email, share with the others our address, phone number, and name. There is no obligation. Like, I'm happy to do it, but I don't think that it. I think it could be good, but I'm just putting that out there too as a suggestion. Have you got anything to add to this, Garry?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether I can't imagine how it would be done. Um,
Well, through email.
some way. No, no. I was thinking for like another way to do it might be for people to lodge all of their names and addresses in some place that could only be accessed in an important situation. But I can see that's not going to be a practical
Ah, yeah,
idea.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it's workable. But I'm just saying that for what it's worth. Um,
Well,
uh,
we're going to see what
yeah.
people say first. Some people might not agree to this, you know. But I was
Well, the thing
thinking,
is,
if I
I
saw
think
somebody, mm,
it may just be up to individuals
mm,
who are in contact with each other personally. You know,
yeah,
like in you know, for instance, you and I are in contact, and so that's no problem just for us to do. And
mhm,
you know, there's Joe and sorry, Bob and Tom and Michael. I think there's a bit of cross communication there. I think
yeah,
at this stage, the only way to do it is probably remind people that they should be doing it
yes,
if they want to be just between the established relationships that they already have, because that's not
yes.
going to be
There is a
problematic.
link, at least a link, that we
And
have
then
a link. Mm,
and the thing is, we might be able to expand outwards from there, but just start
yeah,
from there. To remind people to do that to start with.
yes, yes,
Um, so, for
yes.
instance, from my point of view, I'm quite happy to send that to Bob and Michael and Tom and I don't know. People I haven't listed there. Don't get offended if I haven't mentioned your name, but there'll be a few that I'm quite happy to do that with privately. Um,
Mhm.
uh, so
Well, I think we need to
uh,
have something else than online contact, because in case of emergency.
mm,
So, yeah, in anybody who has a private connection with each other, that's a link. So if we
mm,
know that, for example, you, Garry, you have a private phone number and address for me. If I was not known to anyone else, at least some people could. If I disappeared online, somebody could contact
mm,
you and say, "Well,
mm,
can you get in touch
mm.
with Sophie and see if she's okay?" You see, we can
Yeah.
do the same for anybody else. Like, there is, so that we have a kind of a connection that we can follow the dots, kind of thing. So we're
Yes, I
not.
think so. Yeah, because
Yeah,
by the time you've got like um, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 people who are exchanging this information, um, then that will bring in other people that they're in contact with, and so it would have a larger.
yeah, yeah. It can have.
S-
It can
s-
have a. It can be very important in some situations. We
yeah.
don't realize. I.
Well,
I
see,
am.
this is what happened with Hugh because you know, to be honest, uh, it, I had to think very long and hard about whether to contact his sister
Mm-hmm,
because it was a thing that could have gone in various directions.
mm-hmm.
Um, uh, you know, I mean, for all I know, she might have been quite hostile to him, and the whole thing could have become a very difficult situation. Or you know, I just don't know. You know, I mean, it worked out extremely well, but there was no way to be sure that you weren't taking the lid off a can of worms. Um, yes, you know, with that kind of situation. I mean, I guess it's greatly magnified in this in the case of Hugh because he was the sort of central figure. You know, the whole motivation of this was tied up with him. Um, I think just to go back to the issue of real names, there's a couple of things. One is that after Hugh went, there was a number of people uh, showed up, came out of the woodwork, so to speak, that the regulars didn't know of at all, and we'd never heard of them, who had obviously had quite a close, quite a lot of communication with you. And uh, I mean, the thing is, I mean, since then, those people, we've established a bit of a relationship with them, and it's fine. Um, but I mean, it is perplexing when somebody suddenly appears and asks a question like that. When previously we've had no clue about who they might have been. There's just no there's no background. There's no sort of anything to um, uh, connect to. Um, and the other thing is like here we are. We know what his name is. We never call him by it. And my contention is, what the hell does it bloody well matter? I mean, he was Hugh when I first met him. I knew it wasn't his first. Knew it wasn't his first name from day one. But so what? But did it make any difference to anything? Um, and you know, still to this day, I'd rather call him Hugh, and it just doesn't matter to me. It doesn't materially alter anything.
I
And as he
totally
pointed,
agree with you. I totally agree with you because I met him personally and I kept calling him Hugh in front of people
yeah,
who knew his other name.
you knew his other name. That's right.
So
Yeah,
at the end I called him
yeah.
Captain Hugh because at least it was something, but if those people have this question, I would just want to be able to give them an answer, and I engaged with them. So I will send a link to this meeting, and it's up to, we'll see. Um,
I think so, and especially that it really is genuinely useless information because Hugh did explain there at one stage. I don't know, it was in one of the meetings or somewhere else. I can't remember, but he had gone to a lot of trouble to erase his real identity from the internet.
So there you go. So I just mentioned MD, who was in the meeting 98, and who has appeared on my doorstep, and we've talked about the name. So now let's move to
Yeah.
maybe what you wanted to say about Aleš and maybe Petra. You were mentioning two things
Oh
there.
yeah, I just wanted to. If Petra's listening to this, I just wanted to say that uh, obviously she's very articulate and she writes very well and all this kind of thing, and I just had this impression that she probably had written something very good regarding Hugh, and I can appreciate the fact that she might want to share that far and wide, but just with some of us, if she's comfortable doing that, because um, I feel completely stuck personally trying to write something. It just, no matter what, didn't really seem to work. But she might have got a particular take on it that was workable. Very difficult with a person like Hugh because you're trying to write simultaneously, I guess, something that is meaningful for yourself, but you're also imagining this towering figure of Lord Hugh standing over your looking over your shoulder at you while you're writing it, and you're thinking, oh dear, no, I'm not sure that Hugh would like that, or what would he say if I said this? Oh my goodness, and then it just ends up being a case of paralysis, I guess. Um, Uh, yeah. Did you? Oh, yes, that's right. You've mentioned your two things, haven't you? Yeah. Okay. Um, I just because I haven't been in contact with Alice for a while, uh, because of you know problems that we're having with grief and various disasters and everything. But he sent me an email and I asked him about the Ukraine. So I'll just see if I can bring that up here. Just give me a second. Wrong one. Just bear with me because I'm on the phone. It takes a oh yeah, here it is. Okay, so what he's saying is, okay, it says this is about he's saying, to be honest, most people here in Slovenia are not talking about the Ukrainian situation. They are ignoring it. Those who are outspoken have mostly fallen for the Western propaganda and really believe that Putin is the new Hitler. For Yugoslavian people, it raises some bad memories to see other Slavs fighting each other. I personally feel the same as during the pandemic, that it's so much misinformation and propaganda and people are swallowing it. My personal take on it is that Putin will get what he wants. The Donbass region will have a referendum. They will decide to either become an independent state or they will join Russia. Ukraine will sign a paper promising they will stay neutral. There will be elections and a Putin-friendly president will be installed. And after that, the war is over. Of course, there is the American problem. The Americans would like to use the Ukrainians as cannon fodder to wage a proxy war with Russia. They will not stop that easily. But the world is fed up with US dominance and has decided to let it end. Most of the world hates the US and are very happy that Russia is finally defying them. They will join Russia and leave the US to bleed out economically and socially. I think that a lot of American shadow leaders know this and are therefore willing to start World War III just to keep America in power. And that is what we are witnessing right now in the form of propaganda. I also hang on for a minute to see if this is getting off the topic. Oh yeah, I also have another idea that is a little out there. It is possible that all this is staged. The elites of the world have figured out that the time of reckoning has come. The climate will fuck up the planet with us on it. And the only thing we could do to continue business as usual would be to eradicate about 90% of the population quickly. A few nukes dropped on strategic places, and that would be achieved very quickly and would also cool down the planet. It's a crazy plan, but it's also a crazy planet. What makes me think that this could be the case is the fact that many countries seem to have prepared for this conflict a while ago, or at least for some conflict, probably knowing what's coming down the line with food shortages and stuff like that. And then he says, so I think that the world is in for some big transformation. This year will get uh, hot as hell on the planet and food will be hard to come by. We're in for a time much worse than the Great Depression. I think it will be more like the fall of the Roman Empire, but much faster. And yeah, that was about what he said there. So I think possibly the interesting point about America wanting to escalate this situation in order to kind of justify its continued place in the continued role in the world. But it's not looking particularly good. I mean, just from the things I've been reading, this um, Putin's demand to be paid in rubles for the for the gas being supplied to the EU appears to be one of the great master strokes of genius of the last couple of 100 years of strategic, whatever you want to call it. Um, that it, Hugh used to post sometimes some videos by a fellow YouTube channel. It's called Maneco64, Maneco 64. This guy is in England, and he talks about uh, economic finance and that kind of thing from a very, very down to earth perspective. And he's obviously, I've been tuning into him lately, and he's been dealing quite a lot with the consequences of this demand by Putin to be paid in rubles. And one of the things that comes out of it is that um, it really undoes the whole edifice of sanctions
I'm sorry, Garry,
against Russia.
who is this person that analyzes? I didn't get
Yeah,
his name.
it's Maneco 64, Maneco
Yeah.
64 is the name of his channel on YouTube, and his name
Okay.
is Mario Ineco is his name.
Okay.
Um, and I found out a bit about him because Hugh did post him from time to time. He did, so I'm just saying that because it's got, of course, anything that Hugh has done, it's got the it's got the stamp of God on it. It's approved. Um, yeah, but so this Maneco 64 was saying that it's the um, enforcing the Western European countries to pay in rubles for their gas undoes a lot of the sanctions because it really compels them to resume a trade, an exchange relationship with Russia. Because they're basically what it amounts to is if euros and American dollars are not being used, then the only way for the European countries to get rubles is to exchange something else of real value, such as gold or actual commodities, as they call it, real things. So effectively, what it means is that they've blocked off economic uh, economic exchange with the sanctions, but they're probably now going to force just to resume it by another pathway in order to get the gas. Um, and I think there was another channel. I will find the reference to that in just a moment, where they were talking about this and explaining that the attempts by the EU to get uh, LNG from America and other countries to get it shipped in, and all the rest of it, it is it could really only make up quite a small fraction of their requirements. From a practical point of view, even at the best of times, it would be just about impossible to replace the gas from the Russian pipeline with gas shipped in, liquefied natural gas shipped in um, from the States or anywhere else that they might be able to get it from. So um, I mean, the net effect seems to have been that the West has done more damage to itself. It seems to be the consistent message that people
Yeah.
are putting out there.
Hmm. I
Um,
remember that Bob posted on Reddit a couple of very interesting conversations about this recently from a YouTube channel called the Duran that
mm,
I had never heard of before. They go really in depth into that. And in one of the interviews, they were talking about the fact that some European countries are thinking of building some LNG storage facilities, which is first going to take forever, and second is a very dangerous affair.
mm,
And
mm,
yes, what you say makes a lot of sense. I think we are, well, our leaders are shooting ourselves in the shooting themselves in the foot at the moment with this plan on gas. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, they were saying that even from the point of view of the amount of gas that you can move through existing port facilities is just you just can't move. There's not physically the port infrastructure to handle that. Even if you could get as much gas there as they needed, you simply wouldn't be able to um, uh, get it where it needs to go with the existing facilities. Um, I'm trying to find the name of the other channel that had something fairly good. It'll show up in a minute. I'll get there at any rate. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was crossing my mind was because I was going to mention to you about this possibility of contacting Faulty again regarding the original propositions that Hugh had. And, uh, it, when you look at it, um, when you talk about action to undermine civilization, to slow up and and prevent global industrial civilization from running amok any more than it is and destroying any more planet than it already is. That if you look at the processes here, like I was only thinking this morning that like Extinction Rebellion did an enormous amount of effort they put into their Insulate Britain campaign recently. But basically within a sentence of a speech, Vladimir Putin did more to reduce carbon emissions in the UK than hundreds of thousands of Extinction Rebellion actions would do. I mean, he's effectively cut their gas consumption
Very
by
good
some
point,
huge,
Garry. Very
you
good
know.
point.
Um, it just kind of makes me wonder at this end of history whether industrial civilization itself is the quickest way to bring down industrial civilization, that it's gone past the point where accelerationists and saboteurs have got much to do with it, or could make any material difference. I imagine there's very good counter arguments to that, but I just can't think of one myself. But I'm just bringing that up in case other people want to, make comments at some stage, or pursue that aspect of it.
It's so bizarre that you're saying this about this morning, because I had a dream last night and I woke up and I couldn't go back to sleep because I was thinking the same thing that you're saying, and there must
Mm,
be some
mm,
kind of resonance there, because I was thinking the same, and the reflections after my dream was that what is happening now is exactly the same thing that happened when the COVID happened last 2 years ago, when we started
yeah,
to have conversations with Hugh about, well, comrade COVID, you're doing the job,
it's doing yeah, that's right.
and
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same
No,
thing at the moment. It's not Putin. It's just not just the war, but it's just the general run, the way things are run, the way the civilization is now being run by incompetent, stupid leaders is actually the way to go if we want to protect what can be protected now. So, I'm not going to say we have to be wu-wei and completely and go with the flow and condone these leaders and what they're doing, but so far they seem to be doing a great job on reducing emissions and maybe protecting the environment in a funny,
yeah.
twisted way. It's very funny. I had that dream, and it brought on the same thing that you're saying now.
You're saying, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mm. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to ponder, and yeah, it's interesting just thinking of the term "comrade COVID" because Comrade Putin is. It fits even more appropriately. So, uh, the other thing that was interesting is too regarding just what you mentioned there, the stupid leaders. And when increasingly reading news reports and that, seems to be becoming, I don't know whether I'm a bit slow or not, but it is becoming increasingly obvious that you at first, when they're making these pronouncements, and I wish I could think of an example just a moment, I'll try and think of an example, but you listen to these people saying idiotic things, and you wonder whether they're doing it deliberately, to mislead the entire discussion on a particular point, or whether they are in fact stupid. But it seems increasingly to be the case that they, if not stupid, that they genuinely just do not understand the situation that they're dealing with. They really do seem to have this very infantile, poorly informed, narrowly focused um, uh, take on things, and it, I guess it brings in a lot of different things to consider. Is um, the kind of puppet show of uh, elites and politicians and that kind of thing, where they always stand up there dressed in their suits and ties, looking awfully proper and pretending to be awfully confident and knowledgeable and in control. And I mean, a really glaring example would be Justin Trudeau, who during the trucker thing, who was repeatedly up in front of the microphone there, saying ludicrous things with an absolutely straight face, really emphasizing stuff that was absolute junk. In the statements he was making were just absolutely, um, uh, uh, what's the word? Hyperbolic. They were completely out of order, and yet he was delivering this in a perfectly straight-faced, very serious way, as though the entire act was there to intimidate everybody who was listening into really believing that, I am Justin Trudeau and I am the government and I am in control and I've said this is the way it's going to be and you all respect my authority, and I'm the grand poobah. But of course, in so many ways, this is done over and over again by those people, and the general population, even if they suspect that these people are idiots, have also been conditioned for a very long time to be kind of sucked in by their very proper, dignified, um, responsible person persona that they're trying to project, and that's really um, makes it hard when you've got to go all the way over to the other direction and suddenly think to yourself, oh my God, no, this person's just stupid, because it goes against your ingrained, I guess, lifelong um, efforts uh, of people in authority to I guess it's a form of gaslighting, if it's the meaning of the word, to have you believe in their sincerity and their capabilities, which aren't really there in the end when it's put to the test. But just in relation to that, you said to me you'd been looking at RT News, and uh, I hadn't actually done that. And I went over and read some of their articles, and um, uh, it was very interesting to read that the standard of writing, the presentation and structure of their articles struck me as being noticeably superior to what you find in the Western. Um, uh, like RT, I think, is the Russian government. If you go over to the BBC, or here in Australia, go to the ABC, things like that. I've felt that it was interesting to see that how articulate and well structured their articles were, by comparison. Now, admittedly, uh, you could either view these articles as propaganda or not, depending on how much knowledge you have and how suspicious you are and all the rest of it. But they read very much more, very, just generally read as a more accomplished communication. You felt that your intelligence wasn't being insulted as a reader, uh, at least in terms of the quality of the writing. But maybe, as I said, whether or not you want to question the content is another thing. Um, but also, I think the same applies to when you look at when you look at Putin, um, and the way he presents and talks, and even for that matter, Zelensky, although he's, he's playing it up a bit anyway. But when you compare to like, really, if you compare someone like Boris Johnson or Joe Biden, when they get up and talk, I mean, they're pathetic. They just, can you really, you don't, um, how can I put it? Just personal, I suppose I've just got to be careful. I can't, but the point is, they don't inspire confidence at all. I mean, he, Joe Biden looks as though he's, um, barely able to maintain a vertical position. And people like um, Boris Johnson, for instance, have allowed themselves to be compromised in public to such a degree that they're no longer credible figures at all. They're not even haven't even got the savviness to preserve their own to preserve some kind of a facade of respectability. They can't even do that. I'm sure Vladimir Putin's probably got um, uh, many more dirty little secrets than Boris Johnson has, and many more things to cover up. But he's been sensible enough um, to stop that from being broadcast all over the place. Uh, so that he can maintain a kind of a dignified profile, I guess. Um, so you've got this sort of situation where increasingly the West is starting to look like a bunch of buffoons. And even though you might not agree with the Russian situation and what they're doing and all the rest of it, uh, there's just this sense that they come across that much better. So I'm just putting that out there for what it's worth. It's just seems to be what it looks like.
Do you know what comes to mind when I'm listening to you about this is that movie, I think it was in the 90s, called Idiocracy. I don't know if you remember that movie. It was a comedy about a guy who traveled in time, and so he was an experiment with the army, and he wakes up hundreds of years later on Earth, and everybody's got an IQ that's completely, low, and he, as an average guy, is a genius because he can make sense. And the president of the United States is an ex, I don't know, is it a boxer or a fighter of some kind who's completely a complete idiot, and everybody is, and they don't, and it's just that movie comes to mind because I had that conversation yesterday with that Extinctionati that visited me, MD, who is an engineer and who works worked internationally because he's been in various energy companies, and he's met a lot of engineers in his job, and what he has noticed is the incredible lack of critical thinking that has suddenly appeared. And we had this conversation trying to find out, was this due to the education they were getting from an early stage, even in school or in their specialized schools, or is that is a very important part of the videos that Truth, what's it called, Truth Stream Media.
Oh, Truth Stream, yeah,
They,
yeah,
they were they were they did a lot of
yeah,
work on that, as did I mean, probably inspired by Adam Curtis' view
yeah.
on mind control. But I think those leaders that you're talking about are the same kind of products of the same kind of generation that's coming up now, that's been exposed very young to television, very young to a standard type of education where critical thinking is erased, and that diplomas and things are distributed to people only because on their ability to be parrots and repeat the content of what they told. And I've noticed that in medicine with the new generation of doctors, and I can see that in what happened with their response to the previous plague, where there was no critic from any doctors. There was a few,
Yeah.
but of the way things were handled, first because of the fear of being stricken off the register, but also because there is a lack of critical thinking, because you accept the narrative, the common narrative, and those leaders, idiots, are also the same type of, well, we qualify them, we call them idiots, but idiocy is not just a question of alien cortex thing. It's also a handicap, a disability of critical thinking. It's an impossibility to go there, and the public is faced with that. That's what they're seeing. Yes, you're right about RT. They actually invite. I think a lot of interesting journalists from the West have been directed to that channel through the last 10 years and have become frequent features of their videos and interviews, and I've seen some very interesting journalists that are operating on that channel. Actually, that channel has been suppressed on YouTube. I had to go on Odyssey
To
to
find it.
find it,
Yeah.
and it's extremely difficult even to find the articles and everything. You want to be doing a good bit of navigating. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very. There's a lot in what you're saying there. Um, uh, Actually, I was also thinking, as much as Jordan Peterson can be a problematic person, and I know that was another pet thing with Hugh to
yes.
have to pass a pleasant afternoon taking pot shots at Jordan Peterson to keep himself entertained. But one of the things that Peterson has spoken about is the lack of a sense of responsibility that people have um, in more recent generations, and I think that connects too with what you're saying about the lack of critical thinking skills. Is that part of not bothering to try and think critically and in a discriminating way is also related to not taking responsibility for your own perspective on the world. In other words, it's being delivered to you pre-packaged and you're accepting it, and you're not taking responsibility for what's being installed in your brain by other people. Um, uh, and look, it may boil down to being, as you say, well, obviously things like the digital age and the screen culture, um, um, but also to well, I guess what's ended up being called the woke culture, which is the very protected environment that's existed for a lot of people in the West since the end of the Second World War. Yeah, increasingly more, certainly from say 1980 onwards, when this kind of very uh, nannified sort of society it began to be rolled out. And so you've got uh, people who are uh, have got a very protected existence, probably feel a lot less need to question what's going on around them, and so their critical faculties begin to wither for lack of use. And it's like a lot of things, where if it's delivered to you in a easy to digest prepackaged form, um, it makes you lazy, because it does require genuine effort to think about a thing. Um, and for instance, um, just personally, one thing that I notice is, like, you're listening to mainstream news reports, perhaps on a radio or television like that. They're running those reports past you at quite a high speed, um, and moving quickly onto each successive topic. They're not allowing the listener any time to think about what's being said. There's no space for you to insert yourself into that report. Um, and it happens. You can see it on YouTube. You know, like, people these days, I've heard, have got a tendency to put on something on YouTube and then increase the speed, so that it's going. It's so that they can cram more in. They can't stand the idea of a 10-minute video, so we'll condense it down to 6 minutes or something like that by speeding it up. The price you pay for that is that you've got no time to really consider what's being said before it's too late. It's already gone into your head. It's absorbed at some subconscious level, and if you do that repeatedly, of course, you end up with results that may not be the ones that you would desire if you knew what they were. Um, uh, and this is also related, I guess, to a decline in reading, because reading is something that you do at your own pace, and at any old time where you're stuck, where you've got a query or question or something you're not happy, you can pause and insert yourself into the text, and think, hang on, what's being said here? What's I'm not happy with that. I think I need to think about that for a minute, or I don't want to read anymore just now until I go on and talk to somebody about that particular point, because it's there's something strange going on here. But there's this very insistent pressure in the digital environment. It's just this constant bombardment, and there's no space within things that are being presented. And people don't allow themselves any space between the things, that they just go straight from listening to one thing onto the next thing, onto the next thing, and it all runs together, and they're not sure what uh, in the end, they pass a couple of hours of their time, but did they come away with a useful insight into anything? Or was it just a form of, as they call it, infotainment, where it's, um, sort of a highbrow way of passing the time, I guess. Um, I don't know if I
But this
had
has
something else.
accelerated. I think this has accelerated with the advent of social media and smartphones. Um,
Mm,
I think
mm,
I've seen a trend around 2008, 9, when these things started to take a pace that was unprecedented among leaders
mm,
that we're talking about, among information about, news, nearly everything. I could nearly date it to that. I think the culture of the Facebook and the Twitter and the smartphone have extremely impacted the possibility of reflecting and critical thinking and reading and the whole lot. So we're talking about something about 10 years, 10, 15 years ago. And if you look at the ages of most of those guys like Trudeau, Johnson, Macron, I don't know, what's the name of the Australian one again? I can't remember his name.
oh, Morrison, yeah,
Morrison.
Morrison,
Apart
yeah.
from Biden, who's probably just
I,
taken out of the deep freeze there, but otherwise, all these guys are a generation that was extremely impacted 10, 15 years ago by this.
mm, mm.
I mean, personally, I'm from another time, if I may say. So
I think it's
I
called Another Universe now.
think so, yeah, parallel country.
Yeah.
Yes, and certainly not the metaverse. Um, so I can see that, but I don't know if people who are born later than the 80s or late 70s can see that. I don't know how much conditioning by the television first, and then by the what
Yeah.
ensued with the internet has affected their brain. I have no idea. I can't really judge. I have no
No, I mean,
background.
I remember, you might recall that Hugh spoke about this a little bit once when he talking about his experience in South Africa when he was younger, because television didn't arrive in his life until much later than it had for people of the same age in like the States and here. Sophie, your microphone.
I've just noticed for the
Yeah,
last month that Jitsi turns off the recording automatically at the hour. So I
at
always
the
have
hour,
to
yeah,
start the recording again. But that's fine. I've
mm,
started it again.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, Hugh was making the comment that his because television arrived in his life later than it would have for somebody his age in the States or the UK. That I think what he was trying to say that he was aware of um, the I guess the benefit it was for him personally to be less affected by it at a young age, you know. Um, but the other side of it is uh, it's not just regarding uh, junk videos and information and all the rest of it, because I felt there was an issue with Hugh as well with his output, um, which was an ongoing sort of discussion that Hugh and I were having regarding the way that he wasn't allowing us as the Extinctionati any space between the output that he was producing. You know, many posts on Reddit every day, and almost every single one of them would be quite demanding to read or to look at. You know, there wasn't anything there that you could just sort of deal with in a couple of minutes and not have to put much effort into. It was usually stuff that you had to work at. And I think there it was uh, even in a situation like that, there's still a need for some space for reflection and to integrate the information that you've taken in. You know, really in order to um, you know, I think you could possibly put forward an argument that you can, to a certain extent, you can turn quantity into quality if you're given a little bit of time to work with it and see what that quantity of information is good for and how it connects to things, and then it becomes quality because you sort of connect it with your life or with other things that you're thinking about, and it becomes more meaningful. But if you don't get the space to make those connections, it just remains more information that's been piled in, that's all sitting there in a disconnected way and hasn't been adequately considered. And you're also at risk of accepting ideas that, upon reflection, you might not accept them if you had time to really go into them. Uh, you know, um, an example I can think of um, is there were two videos I saw recently. One of them was the fellow we just spoke about, the Maneko 64, and repeatedly on his channel, he has referred to the money printing that went on during the COVID crisis and the fact that this is substantially what is responsible for the inflation that is now being seen because it's diluted the money supply. It's effectively meant not so much that prices have gone up, but that the value of everybody's currency has gone down because it isn't being matched by any goods or services uh, being exchanged for it. It's just been money that's being created. Um, and it was very interesting because he said that several times, and I've sort of accepted that as economic truth kind of thing, not knowing any better. And there was a different video I was listening to, and again, if I can find the channel, I will tell you. But it's sort of, my notes are a bit dense here. In which the fellow being interviewed obviously knew his stuff. He was extremely down to earth, very um, the sort of person that you wouldn't doubt his sincerity as he was talking. He was coming across in a very authentic way. And the entire video, and again, this was on the financial and economic situation, the entire video was quite interesting, but there was just one point where he said basically flatly the opposite to what Maneko 64 said. He said, all this money printing, he said it doesn't make any difference to anything. He says basically because that money doesn't go anywhere. And I think he was referring to the fact that it only stayed between the central bank and the government. It didn't sort of escape into the general economy. I think that's what he meant, but he didn't elaborate. And that was an example where, when you're listening to some of these videos, you become aware of the fact that you actually have to stop at a certain point because there's something wrong here. There's a disagreement. There's complete mismatch between two people who both appear to know what they're talking about. And it becomes uh, necessary for you to then go away and do some more research into this. And I think this is where people stop. Most people will say, "Oh no, I'll believe what Maneko 64 says because, well, I've been watching him for a while and I kind of like this guy. He's cool. And the other guys sounded okay, but I'd never seen him before and I'd never heard of him, so he's probably got it wrong." And you get this kind of um, and it's easy to do that. It saves time. It might take 2 or 3 hours to go somewhere else on the internet and find out exactly what that fellow meant when he said that printed money doesn't go anywhere and therefore it doesn't affect inflation. Uh, and trying to get that thing expanded upon. But that maybe that's an example of where um, in a world where everybody's time poor, um, and you can see that most people aren't going to take the time to do something like that. They it's just easier for them to take sides based on um, just whatever feeling they're having at the time, I guess, and not really going into things. You can
Well,
see the danger of it.
two things come to mind after what you're saying. Number one is the content Hugh posted on Reddit, whether XR Med or the recent Extinctionati one, but more the XR Med because it was enormous, and I remember you saying often, in a week you couldn't really sift
Couldn't do it.
through all these articles and long videos and interesting things. So personally, what I did and what I've been doing recently is I've been going back in time, not only listening to meetings and things because I've started to do that, but also looking at the content again and saving articles that I think I read a bit too fast, and that I didn't ponder on very much, or videos. So
Mm,
because I mean we have to be grateful in a way that Hugh sort of loaded us with so much stuff as if he knew he was not going to be able to do it anymore for long, because there was like a sort of urgency in him sharing all this thing with us, because no human being who is, I mean, even me who've got a lot of time on my hands, I couldn't really,
couldn't keep up. Yeah.
digest all that. So that's the first thing that
Mm,
comes to mind, is that we have a wealth of articles, and they're not just current affairs. A lot of them are studies from different journals of physics and nature and different things like that, where we can, a history, different things where we can revisit, and we've got like
yeah.
an enormous library at our disposal there from Hugh, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's the answer to the time thing. Um, What was the other thing that came to mind that you said? I don't know. I've suddenly lost track of what
Yeah,
you said.
I'll get back to it.
It'll come back to
Um,
me afterwards. Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. No, there's two things. Just in regard to what you just said, there's two things. One is that it is surprising um, when you read something that's got a bit of depth to it, and that and come back to it sometime later. It can be very surprising to see the extra information that you can get out of it, the different thoughts that occur to you that didn't occur to you the first time you read it. It's amazing how your brain can approach the same information from a different angle if you come back to it at another time. But also what you're saying about the wealth of information that he presented, and that came out towards the end before he left, because as we spoke about, we were aware that a bit of a change in his behaviour and that. And I think one of the last emails I sent him, I specifically asked him the question about this increase in the rate at which he was putting out information, and I said to him, "Are you cramming us because there's not much time left?" And he answered that that was definitely part of what he was doing. There was other. That wasn't the only thing, but it was one of the few things that he gave me a clear, definite answer to. A lot of the other questions I was asking about the change in him, I wasn't getting a direct answer. But this was one of the things that I did, that he felt that yeah, not only had he been giving us a lot of information all along anyway, but just at this particular time, probably since around about last November or so, it had been even more, and he was aware of that. If I can just go back to the video I was talking about a few minutes ago, um, the video I'm referring to, so first of all, I'm referring to Maneko 64, and I don't need to refer to any particular video of his because he very frequently repeats the information in just about all of his videos regarding the money printing leading to being a cause of inflation. But the other video I was comparing it to is the YouTube channel. It's called Stansbury Research, which is Stansberry Research is the YouTube channel. The episode I'm referring to is the 30th of March this year, and the person who was talking is Jim Rickards. And if anyone who's interested in just listening to that, it's a very clearly presented video on the sort of global financial situation at the moment. And he said there, I've quoted him here, it says, money printing doesn't go into inflation because it doesn't go anywhere. And I wish to hell this guy had spent 5 minutes explaining why he feels that is the case, because it seems to go flatly against what Maneko 64 has said repeatedly, and what just about everybody else has said too about regarding the dilution of the value of currency. So if anyone, I was rather hoping that Tom or somebody with a bit of knowledge might be interested to follow that up and maybe could explain it to us at one of the meetings. I think he's got to be one of the people in our group who's got a bit more of an understanding of financial matters, Um, but yeah, anyway.
That won't be
So,
me anyway. That won't be me.
sorry.
I said that won't be me. I'm sorry.
No, well, it
But
it wasn't me. It wasn't me either. But in fact, I used to find this stuff incredibly boring, and I just basically never wanted to listen to it. But Hugh would post these things occasionally, specifically to do. I think it started off when he was promoting the whole idea of the silver squeeze. And went back last year, was it when that what was that? The GameStop whatever they call the shorting of games, whatever. Obviously, this big scam that was going on the stock market at any rate, and he was obviously getting very excited about it. And I think that's when he started to post things about silver as well, and that was when Monaco 64 came up and some other things. And it was uh, what I found was, even though I wasn't particularly interested, was over time I began to understand things that previously I didn't think I would be able to ever get my brain around. Just, I guess, by virtue of repetition, and they say, oh, the government raises money by selling bonds to the whatever the central bank, and then the debt is passed on to the commercial banks, who then pass on the debt to the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and all this kind of thing, and it's all rather, um, you know, difficult for if you've never thought about those things. It's quite difficult to get your brain around. But I just after a while began to realize that it was gradually sinking in, and that uh, a little bit at a time, every time I was listening to one of these videos, it made more sense than last time, and I understood it a little bit better than last time. And then gradually you reach the point where I'm asking a question like this one here about why this fellow is insisting that money printing doesn't produce inflation. But it's
Yeah, but I think Hugh was very good at showing that, you know, people like me and you, I suppose, I don't know what, maybe you have a better understanding than I have, but of all these financial things. But he was saying that it's designedly done that way so that people don't want to
yeah, to
understand
make it
things,
boring. Yeah,
make
that's
it
right. He
boring.
did
So
make
I
it
did the
boring.
same
That's
thing
right.
with you.
Mm,
I talked to
mm,
him about this, and
mm,
I did look at those silver things, and I did go onto the Reddit of those guys who were
yeah.
buying those new shares and the silver and everything. And actually, I
Mm,
remember a conversation with you on the phone one day when I was telling him, "Jesus, I don't understand anything about this, and I'm trying to." And he said, "Read this book by Jesse Livermore called How to Trade in Stocks." And I actually did read it. I don't, to be totally honest, I didn't, I skimmed through certain parts that were really not interesting to me because it was more what events that happened to him. But I did educate myself a little bit through that little book because it was this guy, who actually blew his brains because he lost everything in the stock exchange at some stage of his life. But it
oh,
was
I see.
it was
Yeah,
a very basic, very interesting, and I think it is going a bit against the grain for me to look at all this, but I think it's worth it. And I'm very grateful that you reminded me of that YouTube channel, the Manico 64 one. And I would certainly look at the other one because you need to know the weapons of the enemy,
yeah.
and to
It
combat
was
this.
good general. It was just good general information too for understanding uh, the global, especially now with what's happening with the Russian currency and the Ukraine war. Uh, that very substantial amount of the effect on the West is all occurring in this economic financial realm. And so even if you're not interested in this kind of thing from your personal point of view of your personal finances, it's greatly helpful in understanding, giving more depth to understanding the global situation at the moment. The other channel too that I just thought of too that's important because Hugh posted that now and then was I think it's just called Gold Silver. It's Mike Maloney is the fellow's name.
Yeah,
I
it
think if you
is.
just
It is.
yeah, I think it's called Gold Silver. And Maloney is he also does some very good. Um, he's quite good because he's talking at a basic enough level that you can pick it up anywhere along the way and make some sense out of what he's saying. Um, uh, uh, and he is specifically bringing in the current global situation into his discussions the finance world. So he makes it very relevant to current affairs, and I think that's very good because it's. I remember a talk by. Oh, I got to thank you too for that Alan Watts link you sent me a week or so back. That was. I did listen. Must have heard it a long time ago, but I think that contained a section that I hadn't heard before. It was actually really good. But I just wanted to mention Alan Watts because he. I don't quite know how he got onto the subject, but I remember in one of his talks, he mentioned the depression, the 1920s, and because of course, he's talking about spiritual matters. I guess he was talking about it in the sense of what was real and what was simply a construction of the mind. And he said, look, he said, if you go back to that time of the depression, that Great Depression, he said there was no shortage of actual material things. What there was a shortage of was money, and everybody was playing this kind of game where they were saying, well, because there's no money, therefore we've all got to starve, or because there's no money, we've got we can't buy clothes or can't do this and that and the other. And the the he reframed it to illustrate the ludicrousness of the situations that human beings get into. And he said, imagine that the builders are coming to build you a new house, and they get halfway into the house, and the work stops. And you go and ask them, well, what's going on? Well, there's a recession. We've run out of inches, and and you're going, but there's plenty of wood and nails and hammers. We said? Well, there's no inches. We can't. We're stuck. We've got nothing can be measured. We've got the wood, but we don't know how much there is because we can't measure. We can't. We've got these abstract things called inches, which don't make any difference to the building of a house. You could still build one if you wanted to, but because we've got this abstraction which has disappeared or become in short supply, we then therefore can't do anything in the practical world. And it was basically saying that was what these economic disasters amount to, is the loss of some abstract notion that we have. And then we declare that everything has collapsed and doesn't function anymore. When all that's been lost is really an idea and our attachment to a particular um, just a particular abstraction, I guess. Sorry, I was trying to think of a better word than that. But yeah, you can see it. We've inserted money between ourselves and what we need to stay alive with, or to function with, as a society, and then played all these incredible clever dick games with money in order to get rich without doing anything and all, or to defraud other people and all the rest of it, and become so absolutely obsessed with it that this little game has expanded to take up 99% of reality instead of its true place, which probably should be 1%. And I guess just to get back to my point, which was why, if you're looking at collapse in the global situation, we're in a situation where you end up needing a little bit of understanding of the financial realm to really fill out the story properly.
Well, to give you an anecdote that has nothing really to do with the financial thing, but it's something that just popped into my mind to tell you how people just. Yesterday I was I had the radio on for some reason. I was listening to some news about the farming, the soil, the rain stuff for the farm, because I'm interested in what's going on in the garden. And the news came on, and there was the Irish news, and there was this appeal for this young Ukrainian boy who had arrived as a refugee in Ireland. And there's an appeal from the father of that little boy, because that little boy was a very famous boy on Instagram because he was called Lego Man. And the father said that this little boy had left all his Legos in Ukraine, and that he was making an appeal for people to,
to
yeah,
replenish his Legos. Yeah.
that's what I would. And I thought, am I hearing this? Is this real? Is
Yeah.
this, and that was a big chunk of the news. It
Mm,
was just
mm.
inserted between Putin has bombed whatever this thing, and then you had this
Yeah.
Lego, and it's just, and
Well, see,
this is
this is
true.
the other. That's the other thing, because we were talking about the news broadcast earlier, and the way they will insert trivia in between extremely important things, and it either means, well, it can mean both things. It could mean that the trivia is being elevated to the status of something very important, or that something important is being reduced to the level of trivia. Probably both things are happening at the same time. You get this sort of conflation, because that's, in a way, a kind of a what do they call it? A cognitive dissonance there, where the first thing they read is puts your mind into a certain very serious mode, and there's something of great gravity going on, and the next minute it's cut to some frivolous movie star in Hollywood who had their breasts pumped up too far and they fell off or something, and you, you kind of think, oh my God. Sorry, I was trying to, um, but
This is the same what you're saying about
mm,
time. If I was a real totally conspiracy theorist, I would say that
yeah,
the main thing that they want to do is to rob our time. Attention and given to these trivia things is time that's not used to how to use
mm,
your critical thinking. It's time that's not used for being outdoors. It's time that's not used for meditating. If the conspiracy theorist wanted to really attack something really serious, is the robbery of our time.
yeah, because and there's two, like, and also, because going back to Hugh again, I think his fundamental mission was to bring this back to a basis in a spiritual uh, perspective, and to do that, you have to come back to those very, very small number of things which are fundamental and important to existence. And as you're saying here, robbing people of their time, um, you're robbing them of something very uh, that's critically essential to functioning properly as a human being. And in societies that have become highly skilled at robbing people of their time in every conceivable way and keeping them distracted in they're not just robbing people's time, they're robbing their life and their quality of their life, and robbing them of the possibility of becoming uh, genuinely human instead of just nominally human, which I think is what most people are, just sort of nominal human beings. They're here, and you say, well, they've got two arms and two legs and they can talk, so they're sort of functional. They're okay. We'll send them out into the world, but they're just, um, in so many ways, they're just automatons. Uh, you know, prepackaged thought, and such a strong tendency to conformity and that kind of thing. So yeah, so we've been going for a while. So if do you think we should stop browbeating the world and let them rest for a while? I'm sure they
Yeah, I
Um,
think it would be good for me to go and stretch my legs a bit and go
mm,
outside and just a bit before the rain comes, because I think it's coming soon. And I think yeah, I'm getting a bit tired. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and we have to maybe is Torstein
Well,
Torstein is not is incoming in shadow. That that episode will stay
we
with me
we
for the rest of my life. um,
we're very discreet, Torstein. We won't say a word.
so we won't say anything. And
No.
there you go. So yes, thank
Okay.
you very much, Gary. That was a really nice
Uh,
conversation, nice
I
meeting, and I will
yeah,
post the
just be
links that you've mentioned along with the videos. Um,
yeah. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk about that, so I didn't sort of prepare and write them all
no,
down
no,
in one
that's
place. You know,
brilliant.
but
That's brilliant.
um, yeah, there's just a tendency. You know, sometimes, which is another thing, is something that just personally I really force myself to do is when I'm listening to something on a YouTube channel, if it's worthwhile to make an effort to at least write down a couple of notes while you're listening to it so that you can reflect on it later. And if it does stand out for some reason, to actually write down what that channel was somewhere so that you can go back. I mean, I know you can keep it on your list of favorites and all the rest of it, but it ends up 1,000 things long and it becomes useless, you know. But to actually, write something down and then think, yeah, that was important enough to go back to. As you were saying earlier, going back to a thing and going over it again can reveal more to you, and that's it's quite. Um, and it's also a process of um, doing um, doing less, but doing it at more depth.
In
Just
thorough.
say, okay, yeah. So maybe I only watched one video on YouTube in the past 3 days, but if I watched it really well and it was worth listening to and paid attention to it, that's probably a lot better than having listened to 10 of them and forgotten about them. Or got confused or couldn't remember who said what and when and where and in what context, or maybe you're having a conversation with somebody and you're trying to explain that point, but you completely forgot where you heard it, so you can't refer the other person to it. And it's very helpful if you can say, like what you did, for instance. Well, I'm just looking here where you mentioned that film, the Idiocracy, and you're given a different reference for somebody to follow something up and you know, uh, give a bit of thought to, and that's very helpful to do that because otherwise
It's
you
a
get the
very funny
conversation.
It's a very
Well,
funny movie too. It's just really it's hilarious because
yeah,
it's so close to reality now. It's just amazing
mm,
the problems it touches, even infertility, pollution,
oh,
everything,
okay, yeah.
politics, everything, medicine. It's a comedy, but it's. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but
Well,
it did kind of
you
remind me of that. What was that other
right.
one? Did you maybe post a link about that other one with that? I'm not sure the name of it. With the Chancey Gardner. Was that the
Oh,
name of the film or
being there.
Being There? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that.
That is very
Yeah.
different. Yeah, but also very deep, very. But that's
Mm,
a much slower paced, but very meditative.
mm.
I couldn't call it really a comedy. It was Peter Sellers' last movie actually.
Oh,
Uh,
really? I didn't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah.
I remember going to see it in the cinema at the time because it was a real experience that movie being there. No,
Oh,
Idiocracy is a real comedy, American comedy with really, you know. Sorry, the dog is going crazy.
okay. Mm,
So, but
yeah.
it's well worth watching because it's first
Yeah.
it makes you have a good laugh, and there's so much in it that has come true because I think it was done at least 15 or 20 years ago. I'm I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
about the date that movie was
Is
made. Look it up.
Che I not having seen being there, is that the one where some completely unknown person gets elevated to being the
Yes,
US president? Is that the
yes,
one? Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I mean
He's a
that's still
gardener.
relevant in a way because
Yeah,
um I think that's what happens anyway. There was a an Australian lady who was researching very deeply into the Fukushima. Um, she was a highly qualified scientist, I think. I just can't remember her name now, unfortunately. She, at some stage in her career, had a private audience with Ronald Reagan when he was the US president. And I always remember her little anecdote of meeting Ronald Reagan. And she said, well, she said, I had to phrase things very carefully because this man didn't have a very high IQ. And I, she classed him as being very ordinary intellectually. And when you think about a situation like that Chancy Gardner thing in that film, where you think, yeah, do they just put these puppets in position of power, and
yeah, but
they're only there?
he's not a puppet. Is actually
Hmm,
what he says. They interpret
was
what
very
he says
profound.
in pearls of wisdom, and what he's
Yeah,
saying is
yeah,
the most simple, common sense gardener's observations of nature, and all
yes,
those presidents and bankers that are around him, think he's got some hidden message in what he's saying and elevate him to the role of special advisor against, and he's a total enlightened, maybe innocent gardener,
yeah.
you see, and
It's
it's just such a wonderful, wonderful movie. I mean, it stays with you. It really stays
yeah.
with you.
I think this
Mm.
touches upon things a couple of times we've brought up in the discussions about the depth of wisdom that some people can have, and just by being quite innocent and they're not even aware of it themselves. And it kind of completely takes all the very sophisticated class by surprise who can't sort of process that very well. I remember reading a book once, a very obscure thing. It was called, I think it was called Hadrian the Seventh, written by this remarkable eccentric called Baron Corvo, and it was about structured about um, the Pope had died, and the bishops, the cardinals, were trying to select a new Pope, and by some strange process they couldn't decide. But this completely unknown priest showed up with completely unknown, irrelevant person. And I think the only connection was something about his name that caught their attention. And they ended up electing him, this complete unknown, to be the Pope. And the novel was about how he set about reforming the Catholic Church and did all sorts of astonishing things. And it was a very convoluted story, but it just came to mind because of the, the parallel of a person like that ending up in a position of great power. Anyway, Sophie, we better go because you've got to attend to your puppy dog, and
Yeah,
it's been
he's
long
coming
enough.
here.
Yeah.
He's starting to want to be in the
Is it going?
meeting.
Actually, yeah, you should do that because everybody else brings their cats and dogs into the. You
I don't think
know,
he would stay long. And the cat is somewhere
no,
else.
I
The dog
I,
is
I
wild.
noticed. Like
Yeah, a lot of
Paul
people
Beck.
do that. A lot of
Yeah,
people. Paul Beckwith has got his black
Paul
cat.
Beckwith has got his
Yeah,
growling
yeah,
cat.
yeah,
Who.
yeah, 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 yeah. I
Oh
say
dear.
that has to
Yeah.
do also with some techniques of online viewing, because there's the
Yeah.
appeal of pets is just terrible on social media and various.
Yeah.
Oh God, don't want to go into that.
You
Not
may be
sure
able
how.
to we may be able to introduce the meeting with a dog bark or something,
Yeah, yeah,
something really
yeah, yeah.
unexpected, something
I suppose
completely
there's quite a
unusual.
few of the Extinctionati who could suggest some animal presence. I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it was really nice.
Okay.
I'm going to end this. Do we do this? Do we do this? The silence thing first or not?
we should have something to do. I guess we'll have to give it some thought. But we have
Yeah,
a
because
little.
we did fall silent for the previous meetings where you were not
Well,
there. It was
yeah.
not
Well,
the
hang on.
same. It was not the same. We didn't.
Yeah,
We were. I was missing the voice of you telling us to
yeah.
just let go of everything we had talked about, and
On
and
Paramatmana Name Iti, or whatever he
yeah,
says.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We can just.
we can't replace that. It's not possible.
I can just do this for a minute if you want. I just do
Okay.
the. I don't
Yes.
know. I haven't used it for a while. I hope it'll work. Okay. Well, thanks, Sophie.
Thank you, Garry. I'll stop the recording.
Okay. Okay. Bye then.